The project focuses on ponds that were created at the end of the last ice age across northwest Herefordshire. Now, these are features that are very rare across the UK, but we seem to have a good proportion of them.
You can actually go and walk in parts of northwest Herefordshire and see a pond that was around when mammoths were roaming the landscape and potentially wallowing.
These ponds were special. It was worthwhile looking at them from the point of view of their long-term evolution and their origin and how that relates to their current characteristics.
The project focuses in on three key elements, really. One is we want to know the size of that resource. Where are these ponds and how many have we got? Also, we need to understand more about the character of these ponds, so we're going to be studying them in some depth. And then thirdly, we want to engage more people. These ponds have been not really recognised for their value in the past, and that's been to their detriment. So we want more people to be aware of them so that they can conserve and protect them, particularly landowners, of course.
What we found out is that there seem to be probably 3 types of Ice Age pond at the moment. One of the characteristics of a lot of these ponds is that they don't hold water throughout the year. One of the terms for this is ephemeral. A ghost pond is the term we're using for ponds in general, but particularly in this case, Ice Age ponds which have been filled in.
The best discoveries are always finding new, important ecological sites. If you look at ancient woodlands, people used to talk about primary woodland sites. They've been here since the Ice Age, so these ponds are primary ponds, if you like. They've been in existence for 12,000 years. Because of that, they tend to hold a wide range of species, and they're worthy of protection. What tends to happen with natural ponds is that they draw down in summer. In winter, they'll swell up to 2 or 3 times the size. In the summer, it draws down into the centre, and in the centre it's quite deep. The origin of kettle holes is that they are steep-sided, and then they fill up with sediment over time. And then you've got the ring of vegetation around the edge. If you look at it, it's actually got what we call a zonation of plants. They're going to look slightly different to your garden ponds because, you know, this is what nature does.
One of the sites we were on, we found peat that was kind of 8,900 years old. We had it radiocarbon dated. So what we're finding is these ponds have been in the landscape for at least that length of time. These are natural ponds. These are ponds being where ponds want to be.
We think that Herefordshire may be one of the richest environments in the UK, possibly the world, for ponds that have been there since the Ice Age. So we may well have in this county like a repository of really valuable information and wildlife that can be tracked right the way back thousands of years.
Ponds, and especially Ice Age ponds, are particularly amazing habitats for amphibians especially, and they provide a lot of amazing habitats for a range of species, including plants and vertebrates. We found a lot of great crested newts, which is very exciting.
Just coming onto this reserve with Will the first time and doing a bit of pond dipping, he instantly identified mud snails, and mud snails are really rare creatures. And you start then sort of thinking, well, you know, every species is important. We're all part of the whole worldwide web of nature.
At the moment, we've got large numbers of volunteers who come out and give up their free time sometimes and give up their work just to come out here and enjoy themselves.
Volunteers have helped us in all sorts of ways. They've been able to do desk surveys as well as field surveys. They've been able to do species surveys, but then they're also doing practical habitat management as well. And they've been helping with some of the interpretation, manning stalls, going out and devising walks and trails for the project and things like that.
On this particular reserve, we've been recreating a ghost pond, and we've dug it out and we are restoring it. We're adding an extra pond, but it also allows us to see what's down deep, much deeper than we'd normally go. It was very exciting. At about 1.7 metres, we didn't expect to find it, but we found peat. Where we find peat, we know that there was a pond historically for a long period of time. That's a really exciting find because it starts to build up the story about the landscape and changing climates. So now what we're doing today is, with these 2 volunteers, we're trying to see if we can find more peat.
Beth loves to talk about what she's passionate about, which is geology. She's taught me a lot today, and she's been showing us how to use the augers and how to push them down to the soil and then scrape out the layers and identify what the soil layer is. And it's been a very interesting process.
Getting young people involved in conservation ecology is really important, and I think pond dipping is the ideal route into that because it's just so much fun. It's something that really quite small children can do. I think it's just the perfect way to lead them into a broader understanding of ecology and conservation.
There have been engagement with schools, there have been exhibitions, so we've done all we can to try and bring the heritage to people, as well as providing opportunities for people who can go out to go and engage with the heritage itself. During the project, we've created online resources so that people can access the heritage more easily.
That's where we're going to find our next advocates for wildlife. For most of us that work in conservation, we can trace back our desire to work with wildlife to an event or events in our childhood where we've been out pond dipping or been on bug hunts or regular walks in the woodland.
People are really important to conservation, and for the Ice Age Ponds project, we've tried to encourage more city people and families along to join in as well. The City Town Trail is a series of clues that takes you around the city. You learn about the Ice Age ponds and have a fun day out with your family too.
Citizen science aspect of it was particularly appealing. Digital mapping is something that I've taught myself, and we identified something in the order of 1,000 possible Ice Age ponds.
It's important that we understand the history of these Ice Age ponds. Now, in some areas of Herefordshire, these are still intact because they've had grazing around them. They're still relatively open, and they still have this accumulation of thousands of years of history, as well as the accumulation of very diverse collection of plants and animals sitting in the very same place that they've been sat for thousands of years. In other situations where natural grazing hasn't kept them open, this is where we need to do the management because they've been overshadowed often by trees which have grown. But if we want to maintain some of the biodiversity of these sites, we need to go in and do some careful management, which usually involves coppicing trees or repollarding the trees to maintain the light levels. But it's very important to know that some of the ponds, even though they're very shallow, they don't necessarily hold water year round. This is still a natural ecosystem which we want to maintain. It's a subtle thing to understand. It's not always the best thing to do to extract the silt from a pond. Sometimes it is, but in certain circumstances it's not necessarily the best thing to do. And this is one of the things that we're trying to find out so that we can give advice to landowners as to how to best manage ponds into the future.
Landowner engagement has been fantastic. They've got involved in all sorts of ways, from just allowing us access to getting very much hands-on involved in their conservation work as well.
I've owned a piece of land at Northern Cannon for 3 years, and I got introduced to the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust by one of the neighbouring landowners. They initially contacted me and asked if they could come and survey the site and see if the ponds that I've got on my land, which I just assumed were sort of a nuisance, one of the Ice Age sinkholes. And I'm quite glad that I found out what they were before I did anything that might have damaged them. Now I understand actually that's something that should be preserved and are really, quite unique to this area.
One of the outputs from the project is a toolkit for landowners explaining the key benefits there would be adopting certain conservation managers. Obviously, one is thinking about the nutrient loadings, avoiding excessive fertiliser use, or if animal grazing can be avoided near ponds, that's very helpful. Cutting back vegetation to allow light, and then taking care to consult before doing anything major like dredging a pond or disturbing the surface to any depth.
If you come across a pond on your land or you're walking in the countryside, you think it might be an Ice Age pond of interest. What we're hoping to do is create a network of champions who will be able to give you more advice. And the way to do that is to contact the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, who will have somebody that they can put you on to.
Nature recovery networks are in development at the moment, and essentially they are going to be the roadmap for nature's recovery. They will tell us where we need to create habitat, what type of habitat, and the extent of habitat that we need to create for wildlife to thrive. And of course, this project is generating huge amounts of very valuable data that's going to inform that process for us.
I think it's a very important project to communicate to the wider community because I feel like not many people know about Ice Age ponds. I didn't. And I think it's very important to get young people involved as well and realise the importance of conserving.
I think the Ice Age in general really attracts people, which is a really good draw to get people interested. But the reason people should get involved is thinking about the future. Ponds are a really key source for biodiversity. There's some crazy statistics that say a pond is 20 or 30 times more biodiverse than the same area of a different habitat. Most of our ponds have layers of peat at the bottom of them, which is one of the best sources of carbon capture. People should be looking at how we can care for these ponds, but from both of those points of view, they're kind of the two key crises that we're going through at the moment.
Wildlife is hugely important to us all. It cleans our water, it's an important component of our soils, it cleans our air, it pollinates our plants. And so by understanding wildlife better and the habitats that they occupy, we can conserve them better, and that's better for all of us.
If people want to help the planet, then helping look after ponds is a really great thing to do.